In this video, I want to talk a little bit about the differences between solo RPGs and journaling games. Now, I do want to say thank you to everybody for your flexibility. I've been moving one of the rooms that I record in, and so this room has not been set up yet. I've switched the camera view around, and now I have weird shadows from the light, so I'm still figuring that out, so I appreciate everyone's flexibility with that. But let's dive in. What are the differences between solo RPGs and journaling games, and why does it matter? So first of all, I want to answer that question. Why does it matter? I think this actually matters quite a bit. And the reason I think this matters quite a bit is because I frequently see in online discussions that somebody will come in and say, hey, I'm new to solo RPGs. Does anybody have any suggestions? And there will be lots of really good suggestions, but a lot of the suggestions will be journaling games and a lot of the suggestions will be solo RPGs. And what that person will then do is they will pick one of the games from the list and then they will go play it. And hopefully it was the type of game they were looking for. Because if it's not, they might think that, oh, all solo RPGs are just journaling, and I don't really want to journal. And then they put the hobby down and never come back to it. Or they might think, all solo RPGs are really crunchy games with lots of mechanics, and I really just want to journal, and then they put it down and never come back to it anymore. So I wanted to talk a little bit about today what my thoughts were on the differences between these two genres, I guess, of solo games, and also get some of your comments, because I'm sure that my comments are not going to be completely in line with yours. When I do this discussion, I've had this discussion with other people in real life, face-to-face, in person, and the discussion will often devolve into definitions. It feels at some point during this discussion, a lot of the times, like I'm talking to a lawyer or I'm talking like a lawyer, because defining different parts of a game are kind of necessary to define what type of a game it is. This actually happens in the board gaming space a lot. If you take a game like Candyland and you say, is Candyland a game? You can pop some popcorn, sit down, and just start munching because a long discussion is going to occur. In my view, no, it's not, because there's no actual player decisions being made, but there are other games that are also the same, depending on what you mean by player decision or in-game decision. I mean, Candyland has cards, it has little pieces that you move on a game board on different parts, it's got art, it's got a beginning and end, a clear winner, clear losers. How can that not be a game? Well, you're not doing anything except you're doing an activity, not a game. That would be my argument. But the point is, when you start getting into definitions, this gets very, very convoluted as a discussion. So I'm not going to go into definitions. I'm more gonna talk from the gut here and just talk about what I think the differences are between the two. So let's start with journaling games. What is a journaling game? In my view, a journaling game is a game where the experience of the game is built around journaling and not built around game mechanics. So in my mind, the poster child for journaling games is 1000-Year-Old Vampire. I think this is I've had fun with this game. I think it's a great game, but I also think that its focus is journaling. I wouldn't call 1000-Year Vampire a solo RPG. I would call it a journaling game, because in 1000-Year-Old Vampire, the core player loop is basically getting a prompt from a dice roll that you made and then resolving that through journaling. There are some resources you have in the game. There's actually a limitation to what you can do in the journal in that game. There is a beginning and an end. There you will eventually, as a vampire, die in that game. So I don't know if that's winning or losing, but it tells a great story. So all the parts of a solo RPG are included in 1000-Year-Old Vampire, except the core part of it is interacting through a journal and taking these writing prompts, which you get from the game, and then writing them within the journal. So I would consider that game a journal game. There's a lot of other, if you go to like itch.io, there's a ton, not a million, but thousands probably of journaling games out there. A lot of them very inventive. And if you are a person who is really interested in exploring a game or a story through journaling, definitely go check those out, because that is a huge and growing space within the solo gaming tabletop area. Now contrast that with the solo RPG. A solo RPG may or may not have journaling, but in a solo RPG, at least in my mind, that's not the point. The point is you engage with the story through game mechanics and actions that you can take or your character can take within the game. In 1000-Year-Old Vampire, let's stay with that example, because I think a lot of people are familiar with it. In 1000-Year-Old Vampire, let's say you roll a dice, and for the next X amount of time in the game, your vampire was attacked by wolves in the forest, and they lose a resource. So that's the prompt you get from from the 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. What you do in the game is you journal that scene. You explain how your character felt afterwards, what happened within the scene, and that's all written out in your journal, which is kind of an in-game artifact in itself. Now, in a solo RPG, what would happen is you'd be attacked by wolves in a forest, and they're trying to get one of your artifacts, or maybe you're trying to avoid one of those from happening. So you might think, oh no, I'm a vampire, but I don't want to get torn apart limb by these wolves, so I'm going to climb this tree. So what you would do is you would look at within the mechanics of the game. Maybe there's a climbing skill or like an acrobatic skill check or a strength roll you can make. You make the roll, and the result of that roll will determine the direction that the story goes. Maybe it's a success. Okay, maybe you climb up. Maybe you're playing like a Powered by the Apocalypse style game and it's a partial success. So you do get up the tree, but that's how you lose your artifacts. Or maybe it's a complete failure, so you don't get up the tree, and then the wolves do start tearing you apart limb by limb, and in that process you lose that artifact. In my mind, those are the two major distinction points. That is the main difference between the two games. In journaling RPGs or journaling games, you resolve the story through your journal. And in solo RPGs, you resolve the story through in-game actions and or mechanics. So in my mind, that's the difference. I'd love to hear your thoughts below on it. What I want to kind of close the video on is which one do I like more? And for me, the choice is very, very obvious. I very much enjoy solo RPGs more than I do a solo journaling kind of game experience. And I'll tell you why. For some reason, my mind gets very, very excited when there are simulationist mechanics within solo tabletop RPGs. That's why Pendragon is one of my favorite, because there is a whole part of that game called the winter phase where you simulate what has occurred to your family, to your family members, to your estate in the off season of that game before you start the next year within the game. So there's all these things that kind of happen through the mechanics of the game, and then at the start of the next year you get to decide how you and your character react to all those things. I find that part of games very, very fun. What I don't find as fun is rolling a prompt through a game and then finding out what I get to journal. Because journaling, just like any other way of tracking a story, I made a previous video about how I track my games. Whether it's journaling or doing a captain's log, or a lot of people after that video suggested pictures, which is not something I've gotten into as much, but it doesn't matter how you track your game. I don't necessarily want to experience the story through the journaling as much as I want to use journaling or another tactic to explain what's happened in the story. And so for me, solo RPGs are a lot more fun. I think there's a lot more variance, and honestly, it's a little bit closer to like puzzle solving for me, whereas a journaling game is definitely a lot like, it's almost too much creativity, I guess. There's too much of a blank page, and you have a lot more freedom, I think, within a lot of journaling games. So that's what I think the difference is, and of course what I think I enjoy better, solo RPGs. Of course, if you enjoy solo journaling games, I think that's completely great. I think everybody can go enjoy what they want. But I did want to make this video because I see this happening a lot in online discussions where somebody comes out and says, hey, what's a good solo RPG to play? And then within the mixture of all these really great solo RPGs are a lot of journaling games, which I think is a good thing to do, especially for an introduction to tabletop gaming, solo tabletop gaming, is give them some solo or some journaling options. But I think it's important to recognize and call out, hey, these are journaling games. The experience is going to be different than a more traditional solo RPG, and just let people know that there's a difference in gameplay experience when you compare like a journaling game to a solo RPG. Speaking of solo RPGs, I don't have a solo RPG that I've designed. Well, kind of. I have one that I'm working on, but I do have a solo tabletop print and play game called Dwarf Mine. If you go to itch.io, it's on the Halloween sale. Please check that out if you're interested. There's also a journaling component to that game, although I would not describe it as a journaling game. So yeah, take a look at that. Anyways, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for your flexibility with my background. I think this is the angle I like best if I can figure out the lighting, and then I can set up all of the cool old school stuff I have kind of stored away back there and on the ground by my feet where you can't see. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are between journaling games, solo RPGs, which one you like better, and I'll see you in the next video.